Well, breaking news to share with you guys today. There is a literal revolt happening right now at the Pentagon and against Pete Hegseth. You see, Pete Hegseth put in new rules for the mainstream media at the Pentagon, and they are not very happy about it. In fact, they've got until 5 p.m. October 14th, that is today, Tuesday, to comply, or else there will be repercussions. Take a listen to the rules that were implemented.
New rules taking effect for journalists covering the Department of Defense. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth rolled out the unprecedented policy Friday. Under the restrictions, reporters are required to pledge not to gather information, including classified reports, that is not authorized for release. The Pentagon says members of the media who fail to follow the policy could lose access to the Pentagon. Officials say the move aims to address potential risks to national security.
You might be asking yourself why those weren't rules in the first place. And hey, maybe that's why a lot of leaks have been happening against Pentagon officials and the mainstream media. So this is only logic that is being put into place here. And, the fact that they shouldn't have access to highly classified information and unauthorized information could be a national security concern. And now, because of that new rule, there's a literal revolt. You guys are going to be floored. But before I dive into that, just a quick break from my sponsor. You know, sometimes you see something and you think, I've got to have one of those in my life like yesterday. Well, these Trump sneakers that are gold are going to make you think just that. Take a look at these bad boys. They aren't just shoes. They're a full-on statement. They're bold. They're fearless. They're unapologetic and patriotic. And let me tell you, they don't just look good on your feet. They feel good as well. They're comfortable. They're lightweight and they are durable. But you know what's best about these is they send a message, and a message, by the way, that liberals are not going to like. That is why you should check these out ASAP, and you can even buy them as a gift. All you have to do to check these bad boys out is go to the MAGAoffers.com/Lisa. That's the MAGAoffers.com/Lisa. And right now, if you go to my site, you can get it for 15% off just for my audience only. And by the way, you want to hurry up and get a jump on this because they are only selling 1,000 pairs. So check it out now. Anyhow, if you want more information, click that more button or click the link in the description box below. So what on earth is going on with this revolt? Take a look at this, and I found this on ZeroHedge.com. Goodbye Hegseth shows legacy media outlets the door amid revolt against new Pentagon press policy. It states, a growing list of news organizations with access to Pentagon briefing have formally rejected a new Department of War policy that would require journalists to sign a pledge promising not to seek unauthorized material and limiting their access to certain areas unless accompanied by an official. In essence, it's part of the continuing crackdown on leaks. But now there's a full-on, very public revolt against the policy introduced last month by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who has himself been thrust into the center of controversy since being named Pentagon's chief due to the embarrassing Yemen group chat signal episode early in the Trump administration. Now, outlets have been told to sign the pledge by Tuesday, October 14th at 5 p.m. or surrender their press credentials within 24 hours after weeks ago the new policy was introduced. So they have just a few hours, or they're going to get their press credentials to the Pentagon revoked. Now, here's the news agencies that are in rebellion to this: the Washington Post, the NYT, the CNN, Atlantic, Politico, The Hill, The Guardian, Reuters, the AP, NPR, HuffPost, Breaking Defense, and others. And then there's one semi-conservative outlet, Newsmax, who is standing against that as well. Now, in all honesty, I don't think this is too much to ask, but Pete Hegseth put this out on his X page, and this is just a simple breakdown of it. And he says, Pentagon access is a privilege, not a right. So here is the Department of War press credentials for dummies. Number one, press no longer roams free. Why they were roaming free in a highly classified government department is a good question, right? Number two, press must wear visible badges. I don't think that's too much to ask. Number 3, credential press no longer permitted to solicit criminal acts. In other words, taking and getting information that is classified or unauthorized. That's the end, he says. Pentagon now has the same rules as every U.S. military installation. Again, the question therein lies, why didn't we have these rules in the first place? Who knows? It's any man's guess. But if we have them at military installations, why don't we have them at one of our most classified spaces in the United States government called the Pentagon? Now, of course, this has ignited an all-out revolt among mainstream media. Here's the New York Times. Here's our statement, says NYT, on the Pentagon's press pass policy. And they're crying a river. Journalists from the NYT will not sign the Pentagon's revised press pass policy, which threatens to punish them for ordinary news gatherings. He didn't say that. Protected by the First Amendment. Since the policy was announced, we have experienced concerns that it is going to constrain how journalists can report on the military, which is funded by nearly $1 trillion in taxpaying dollars annually. The public has a right to know how the government and military operate. We do, by the way, but not if it's classified and unauthorized kind of information that could put us at a national security risk. But anyway, they say they're not going to sign it. So I'm curious, if the NYT is not going to sign it, will Pete Hegseth actually take their credentials? I guess we'll find out at 5 p.m. and I believe it's Eastern Standard Time, and I will keep you updated in tomorrow's video. And then here's the WAPO also issuing their own statement. Journals from Washington Post will not be signing the Pentagon's new press access policy. The proposed restrictions undercut the First Amendment protections by placing unnecessary constraints on gathering and information, blah, 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 blah. So they say they're not going to sign it. Can you please take away their press credential passes? I'm waiting. And not just them. We also have Cry Me a River from The Atlantic. They also put out something very similar. It's our First Amendment right from them as well. And then Gavin Newsom also weighed in on this. And he's regarding Pete Hegseth's post I showed you earlier. He says, no free speech, no free press if you hurt poor Petey's feelings. So they're all crying themselves this big mainstream media river. I just, it is what it is. But I really hope they take away the press passes if they're not going to abide by those rules. Like I said, this could be a national security risk. This could be an issue. In fact, Pete Hegseth was mocking the mainstream media on his X page. You can see he gives the goodbye emoji, bye, 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 pretty much to every one of the people who put that stuff out. He also retweeted this and wrote, yes. And Daisy says, is this because they can't roam the Pentagon freely? Do they believe they deserve unrestricted access to a highly classified military installation under the First Amendment? And you can see the baby crying there, the News Atlantic, yada, yada. And that's the question. They actually believe that they are subject to highly classified military information. And this is why a lot of things, I believe, have been leaking out in the past, because we have had these things going on. I mean, this is insane. And what really makes me sick is suddenly the Atlantic and the mainstream media at Washington Post and others are suddenly concerned with the First Amendment. Though these are the same mainstream media outlets that encourage suppression of conservatives and conservatives' ideas under the vid, under the election, and were pro shutting down the First Amendment for certain things they didn't want to hear from the opposing side. And now suddenly they're screaming First Amendment. They have no right, especially after encouraging social media websites to put them first and foremost, because, they weren't getting as many clicks as alternative media like Tim Pool, Lisa Haven, and Joe Rogan, and some of these other people. No. So they encourage social media sites to put them at the top, because we're legitimate mainstream news. They're not, because they weren't getting as much attention. And now they're going to scream the First Amendment. I mean, they are literally for all suppression when they told these social media, and they abide by it. Even YouTube here put them all on the top. These are the news sources you got to pay attention to. Forget the other people. Even though YouTube was originally sponsored by you, the you in YouTube meant we're not going to go after the normals. It's going to be about you and your channel, what you bring, and the people can decide if they like your info, if they like what you're saying, and they can determine for themselves. But unfortunately, this is where we're at. So it just strikes me as odd that that is what is going on. But anyway, there's this big revolt in the Pentagon happening against Pete Hegseth. We shall see whether or not their credentials get revoked. TikTok, folks, time is a ticking. With all of that, please get to restrictedrepublic.com. I created this in light of all the censorship that's happened over the years. And although we have a little more leniency, shall we say, right now with Donald J. Trump, I still want to encourage you to get there because we never know what tomorrow holds. Use the coupon code Lisa and the number 5 to get it for $5 per month. We've got great exclusive content coming up there this week. I've done a few videos in advance. You're not going to want to miss them. I put some time into them, but there's some exclusive stuff behind the scenes. And it comes with a 14-day free trial. You can cancel whenever you want, but use the coupon code Lisa and the number 5 to get it for $5 per month. Anyhow, I love you all. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.